And we're back to learning to code, and this is the 6th video of my freecodecamp walkthrough. This time I'm going to show you how to pass this Rothko Painting course. It's still part of the responsive web design curriculum, but it's this one. It has 45 steps, and here's the preview of what we're going to build. So it introduces you to the box model. We're going to create divs. The first steps are about creating the basic outline in HTML. We already know that from the first walkthroughs. So let us quickly go over it. We need a doc type HTML, HTML opening and closing tags, and inside nested is our head and a body. Alright, and it wants us already to give it a language attribute with the value English right here in our HTML tag. So don't forget it, like I just did. Step 2. At first we'll add a meta information right here in our head for the character set UTF-8, and we're also going to add a title. It's still in the head. It's going to be Rothko Painting. And we're going to add an image inside of our body. Images are self-closing, so we can just add the source right here. It's given. Copy paste it, and you should see this image. Step 3. It's a little bit of an explanation what we get. So we basically have 3 areas, and these 3 areas come along with every box. So we're going to use div containers in the future to create this Rothko painting, and then it's going to become much clearer what these 3 areas are. In this step, you're supposed to replace the image with this one. So you can see the border and the padding. It's already named, but we also have a margin, which could be seen as the 3rd area. In step 4, we're going to replace the image once more. And a little bit more information about the padding is given. And now you can also see the margin in this 3rd image. So padding is directly outside of your content. Then you've got the border of your container, and outside of the border is the margin. And these are these 3 areas that I was talking about. In step 5, we are simply supposed to delete the image, and then we can actually start building our Rothko painting with div containers. Step 6, we're going to create our first div. It's inside of the body. We're going to give it a class canvas. Div containers have a closing tag, so don't forget it. Step 7. We're now going to link our HTML to a CSS file. So we are back inside of the head, and we'll use the link with the attribute relation, a value of style sheet. And we've got our href given, which is styles.css right here. We'll just write it like so. We don't need the dot and the backslash. And now we can see the index and the styles in our editor. and we are in the CSS. We're going to style our div, and we'll use the class canvas as a selector. So dot canvas, curly brackets, going to adjust the width and set it to 500 pixels. For now we can't see much as our canvas doesn't have any content. Let's change the height of it. And by giving it a height and a width, this box now actually exists. So if we would give it a color now, we could see it, and that's exactly what we're going to do in step 10. We're still inside of our canvas class. We're going to change the background color to this hex code. And now we can see it, as width and height are now defined. And this is the canvas that we're going to use to paint on. In step 11, we're going to add the first rectangle of painting. So we're back in our index, but at first we're going to add a frame to our canvas. So we'll create a new div container and nest the canvas inside of it. This new div container has a class frame. Step 12, we're going to style our frame. So class selector dot frame, curly brackets, and we're going to give it a border. And we can directly see it on the right hand side. 50 pixels, solid and black is what we need. You can, for example, write it like this: solid black 50 pixels. And here it is. Step 13. I'm going to adjust its width now. And set it to 500 pixels. Canvas has the same width. So we've gotten rid now of this white part that we had right here on the right hand side. Step 14. Now we're going to add the padding to our frame. And watch what happens if we use it. We're in our frame class selector right here in the CSS, and we'll add 50 pixels of padding, and this is what we've got now. So the padding gives us basically a little bit of white space in between our frame and the canvas. Step 15, now we're going to address the margin. For horizontal, we'll use auto, and for vertical 20 pixels. We can make it all 20 pixels. And you can see top, bottom, left and right will be adjusted then. But we need it only for vertical, so top and bottom. So we write it like this: 20 pixels, space auto. For left and right will be adjusted automatically according to our browser window size. And top and bottom is 20 pixels. Step 16. We need a new div element, and this is now a rectangle. We're going to, let's say, paint on our canvas. So it's nested inside of the div with the class canvas. And we're going to call this one simply 1. So it's the first. We use it in step 17 as a class selector in the CSS and set the width to 425 pixels. We'll change the height of it to 150. And now we're going to change the background color and it will become visible. The hex code is given. And here it becomes visible. So it's on top of our canvas as we have nested it inside of it. Let's use the margin to get it a little bit away from the top left of the canvas. The margin of 20 pixels. We've adjusted it already. But let's give it auto for left and right. And for top and bottom we'll make it 20 pixels. So it's going to push past the canvas and onto the frame's border, which is the reason why we don't have a separation on top. And we can use the padding for that. Like so. And now it's not going to get pushed anymore as it's a solid element. Because we've used 1 pixel of padding, we'll have to change the width right here. Or we can also just use a property of overflow and set it to hidden. It has the same effect. So now we can keep our width and height of the canvas and we've got no issue with that. Step 23, we're going to add a second div. It's also nested inside of the canvas. We'll give it a class 2. Step 24, let's adjust the width of our class 2 div. Step 25, we're going to adjust the height. And again, for now you can't see anything as it doesn't have a color. And step 26, we're going to change that. Now we can see it. And thanks to our margin here of 20 pixels for div container with the class 1, we already have a separation. And I set the margin for the class 2 div to auto, so it's in center for left and right. Step 28, our last direct angle. Once again, it's nested inside of our canvas, which is nested inside of the frame. Class 3 for it. 29. We'll select the class 3 and change its width. This time we're going to use percentages, so a relative value. And for height also a relative value, so that would also work instead of using absolute values in pixels. We need a background color in step 31. And for now, we don't have a clear separation between this one and the class 2 div. So let us set the margin to auto for class 3. We've got it centered at least left and right for now. but top and bottom isn't fine for now. You can see that here with class 1. So we would have to add, for example, a margin to class 2. And we're going to do something like this in step 33. So instead of just using auto, we're going to use 0 for top, auto for right, 20 for bottom, and auto for left. And now it works. Step 34. We're going to give it a little bit of blur. And I believe it's new, so we haven't used that in the freecodecamp walkthrough until now. We're going to target this one, so the canvas, which is our, what would you say, the darkest red element. And you can write it like this: filter with a value of blur and give it like 2 pixels. And it's going to affect everything right here except for the frame. And step 35. We're going to target class 1 and 2, which are our first 2 rectangles. And we'll give it a blur as well. And this was the way it was written, so filter and blur it out. And we'll add 1 pixel. So keep in mind this is additional, so it doesn't have a blur of 1 pixel, it has the blur of 2 pixels from the canvas plus 1 pixel from this new class selection. So in total they now have 3 pixels of blur. Step 36. We're going to increase the blur of 3 as well. But it's supposed to get 2 pixels instead of just 1. Now we're good here. Step 37. Now we're going to play around with the shadow. We are in our class selector 1. We can directly use the property box shadow and the values are given. And here's the color. And that gives us a little bit of a shadow. We do the same for class 2. But we're going to use a different color. Once more, box shadow, this time for class 3. The values and the color is given. Step 40. Now we're going to address the border radius. At first for our one class div element, so the rectangle on top of our canvas. Properties border radius. And the value is 9 pixels. So this is what it does, it just rounds the corners. And we're going to repeat the process, this time for our second div. 8 pixels for bottom right and top left. And 10 pixels for bottom left and top right. So this is the way to write it. If you get lost, just set it to 80 for example, and you can clearly see it. So this is top left and bottom right. And the second value, if I make it 100, you can see it's top right and bottom left. Step 42. Let's change the border radius for our class 3 div. We're already in this class selector. What do we need? We need 30 pixels, 25, 60 and 12. So every corner gets a different value. And you can see this as clockwise, so the first value is top, second value is right, and so forth. Once again, if I exaggerate it, you can see it. First value is top left, second value is top right, third value is bottom right, and fourth value is bottom left. So we should be fine with this one. Let's go to step 43. We're going to use the transform property. And as far as I can recall, we haven't used that until now in freecodecamp either. So if you're unsure of how to write it, you can just write something in it, see what it does, maybe check the code, and freecodecamp gives you a hint here and there if you get stuck. On here you can see how it is correctly written. So you need rotate these brackets and then put in the value, and it needs to have a unit. In this case we'll use degrees. And if I make it 10, you can see how it gets rotated. And it has to be minus because we should rotate it counterclockwise, so make it minus 0.6 degrees. We're going to transform our class 2 div. Once again, transform, then rotate, and this time we use 0.4 degrees and it's clockwise, so we don't need a minus. Step 45. Once again, this time class 3 div, transform, rotate, counterclockwise, so minus, and 0.2 degrees. And if I exaggerate it, you can see what it does. And that's it. This is how you can pass this Rothko Painting course in a responsive web design curriculum. Go over it yourself and use this walkthrough as a reference when you get stuck. I hope this video was helpful, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.